Okay. All right. So my podcast this evening is a deep, heavy issue that there's not an American that I know of that would not somehow have a chance of being affected by the opioid epidemic that's going on in the country right now. And Tom Moore here runs a support group for parents, siblings,
The whole
family
family.
members,
Yep.
friends. Anybody can show up to this if they're dealing. Like, say you got a best friend that's got trouble. They can come talk to you and learn how to cope, how to deal with the situation.
Absolutely.
Okay, and Tom's group is run through a church. It's a kind of a it's like we were talking before the podcast. That some people are a little freaked out about that, but you got to let all that go and go in there and try and get the information that you got to get out of it.
Walk through your fears and just come in and sit down in the meeting.
Right. Now, let's talk about, like, I think that there's a stigma. Where this topic's got so many stigmas, it's insane. Stigma to the parent that lost the child, which Tom lost his son 5.5 years ago to this epidemic, and then there's also the stigma for the addict, that they're somehow either gluttons or they have no self control or something like, and none
Immoral.
of that. Yeah, immoral. Right, I heard that one too. Which, from my research, none of that is even applicable in this situation. Every single person that's out there can become an addict if they're just put into the right situation. Some of my research has gone into I think it's the Purdue family or something like that, the people who came up with OxyContin.
Mm-hmm.
And they've made billions of dollars off of this and ruined millions of lives in the process.
34 billion.
34 billion
was their profits.
Was their profits, right. I read that. So, there's just so much to cover in this situation. The first thing would be, like, so, what kind of guy are you? What are the things you like to do? Like, explain, before this all went down, what do you do for a living, Tom? I don't even know.
I've been in sales my whole life.
Okay, what do you sell?
Currently, I'm unemployed.
Oh, jeez.
Just lost my position a couple of weeks ago. But I was in the automobile industry for about 15 years, but sold outdoor power equipment, worked for a wholesale florist. Just kind of been in sales my whole life. Never went through finished college degree, so sales was a way that I figured out I could make some money. And
I'm a real estate broker. I'm in sales too. Yeah, I sold construction before that. So like hobbies and stuff like that. I saw on your Facebook feed that you were camping just not too long ago.
Yeah, camping's a big part of my life in the summertime. I grew up camping. My kids grew up camping, and now I've got a granddaughter that we take her camping all the time.
Nice.
We've got a permanent spot out near Coal City, and it's a nice short drive from New Lenox. So I'm out there like every weekend in the summertime.
Good, and that was all your life, or that's always been a thing you've done? Outdoors guy otherwise, hunt, fish, that kind of stuff?
Kind of gave up on the fishing, just more, recreation, boating.
Sure.
My brother's got a speedboat and a pontoon boat, and there's a beach there, and I just like to go out in the nature and relax.
Now, where are you from? Are you always from, like, the Joliet area, or where are you from?
Originally from Mount Greenwood, south side of Chicago. Then we moved to Evergreen Park. I graduated from Evergreen Park in 1981. When I got married in 1991, we moved out to New Lenox, and been out there ever since. 28 years.
The base of my audience is probably, New Lenox, the Lincoln Way area, as far as that goes. So, like, the people that are listening, Tom's a guy just like you are. Tom's, blindsided by this situation that went down, and I would encourage anybody to have a listen to what's going on, just to, if there's any sort of something you can glean that'd be preventative in this situation, that you could, what would you say to someone, like, what would be something that they should look for early on? Are there some mistakes? I don't want to cross any lines with you either. I don't want to ask something that's going to, like, make, I'm not.
You can ask me anything.
Okay, good.
But as far as, the biggest preventative thing to do is to just get educated. Don't think that it can't happen to you. Don't think it won't happen to your kids. My kids, my son, honor roll students, athletes, it happened so fast, and When I found out that there was heroin in our neighborhood, my kids were both in high school, and when I found out there was heroin in my neighborhood, it just blindsided me. That just wasn't something on my radar.
Now, how did he get? Because how old are you, Tom? Do you mind me asking?
55.
55. Okay, I'm 48, and growing up, we grew up in the Frankfurt area. Heroin just was not. I mean, we heard about it every once in a while, but it just was not a thing that was around for us to for anyone to even mess with anyway. And it never seemed like something that was even remotely appealing to me as far as that goes. Like, I saw it done in movies and stuff like that. It looked like the guy just fell over and went to sleep or whatever like that. It did not look like something I wanted to do. Like, it didn't look like it was any fun even remotely. So I didn't understand how people were, why that would be. And then I have a aversion to needles. That's, can't stand that. So anyways, is it just more available now than it ever was before, or?
That's part of the problem. The availability is so easy. I like to think, try to make a long story short, the introduction of the proliferation of prescription pain pills. Opioid. You talked about OxyContin, but Norco. Any of the Vicodin, hydrocodone, stuff like that. Anything with opioids became so prevalent and became so widely prescribed and widely used that there was just so many people taking these pain pills. And in my opinion, and everything that I talk about is my opinion, but in my opinion, the drug cartels, they're business people. They're not foolish. Importing marijuana was not a big thing anymore. We were growing marijuana in the States here, so they saw the need for pain relief, and they started making heroin readily available. On the streets,
that's something I never looked into. Like, if there was, because obviously there had to be a jump in that, and then the addition of fentanyl being, what I saw was 2 grains of salt worth of that can kill you.
Fentanyl is a game changer, and here's the thing about fentanyl. Heroin, you have to, it's a crop, the poppy plant. So you have to plant it, you have to manage it, you have to cultivate it, you have to process it, and then you have to transport it. The fentanyl is chemical. It's made in a lab.
Synthetic, right?
And it's so much more potent and so much easier. You can smuggle large quantities, much easier.
When all you need is 2 grains of salt to kill you.
A couple of grains of salt.
It's insane.
Yeah. And it's kind of the dealers and distributors. It's all they're not scientists. They're using people as guinea pigs and trying to the heroin. Most of the heroin in this part of the country comes from Mexico. It's a lower grade of heroin, black tar heroin. And so the dealers use the fentanyl to help boost the quality of the heroin.
Sure.
They don't have a fentanyl problem over in Europe. From what I've read about, over in Europe, they get great high quality heroin from Afghanistan. So
that's why I heard that a lot of Europe gets all their from Afghanistan. That's the deal.
Right. But they don't deal with it. They don't have a fentanyl problem over there, at least not yet, like we do here, because they don't have a quality issue.
Now, okay, so I saw a documentary that was talking about the history of the poppy plant, which is where heroin's derived from, the poppy seed or whatever it is. And people have been taking heroin since the Roman Empire days, since ancient China and stuff like that. But it was never like it was always a medicine, not a drug of pleasure sort of thing. And then in this country, you could get prescribed heroin at one time. There were ads and stuff I saw that were
Bayer.
Bayer, right, was right. So I mean, I don't know what's gone on because the numbers that I found are staggering. I mean, I was talking before the podcast, numbers like 70, 80,000 people dying. You said 200 people a day.
200 people a day. That's like a plane load full of people falling out of the sky every day.
Every day, and there's no. I know too many people in my, suburban life that are affected by this. Like, I mean, think I know 5 people that their families lost somebody. Maybe not to overdose. One guy had a heart attack. Like they said, it was unrelated, but he was so screwed up for so long. I gotta imagine that goes back to that. But so like we're all these people are affected by this, and has there been any meaningful legislation passed? I haven't seen any that in my research that like was a game changer.
I don't think so yet. It's coming very slow. Again, in my opinion, I think that this epidemic, this crisis, isn't going to be solved by the government. It's going to be solved one community at a time. People standing up, people getting educated, people being aware, and people making a difference and taking back changing perceptions. And it's I don't believe that drugs are a problem. I think the drugs are a symptom of a problem. The question is why are we in so much pain that so many people want to self-medicate to extreme?
Right. Now, so okay.
These opioid pain medications, they have a place in medicine for short-term pain relief, but you don't need 30 of them because you got your wisdom teeth pulled.
Right. The fentanyl was developed for cancer patients that were terminal.
Yeah. Yes, dying.
People. Right. Yeah. Just to relieve the pain from that. So like I'm overwhelmed by what this week I knew you were coming in, and I did as much reading as I could, and then every chance I had there was some Netflix documentary that was on that I was trying to catch to try and figure stuff out, and there's so much swirling around my head as far as like the massive amount of numbers. I mean, we just had some black market vape pen situation where 6 people died, and they're immediately talking about banning fruit flavored. Right. And I'm like, good golly, you're banning that. I never.
That's not important.
No, right. I never liked the argument of because the gun crowd always makes the argument that 400 and some odd people were killed by rifles last year, but this many people were killed by this. Like every issue's touching somebody, and it needs to be looked at and see what you can do to rectify the situation. But 400,000 people die a year from tobacco use, and we haven't banned cigarettes yet.
Right.
But 6 people die from the vape thing, and we're ready to ban that situation completely. The billions that were made, like you said, the Purdue family made $34 billion off of. There's a lot of dead bodies in the wake of that money that they made. I gotta imagine that the money somehow helps make it not, because it seems like a thing that you could just be like, right, we found ground zero. We could do something right here with the drug prescription situation, because I think doctors were getting wealthy off of prescribing it.
Sure.
And the pharmaceutical companies were doing real well too. And then one of the things that I read said that that Purdue family was now cornering the market on there's a drug that they give you when you OD that's supposed to reverse the effects of it, like right away, like boom, like I can't remember what the name of it was now.
Narcan,
right, exactly.
Yep.
And
brought some with me.
Oh, okay, all right, there you go.
We can talk about that later, but that's
right. Oh, the nasal spray, right. So I mean, this I saw a movie a couple months ago with the Pretty Woman lady.
Julia
Roberts, something about Ben or something like that, and she had this on her, and she needed to get it redone at the because it was expired or whatever like that, and I think it ended up in the movie. It ended up saving the kid's life in the end, but so that's an amazing product, but I don't think this family should be able to make money off of the fact that you caused this problem. Like, I don't know, this should be like penicillin where it's like free or something like that. People should have that readily available. So it was used in this country as a pain reliever. Bayer company used it at one point. I mean, cocaine was available in Coca-Cola at one time too. Yeah. So like all these things were a dual situation, and now we've got all these deaths. We've got it's rampant. So I grew up, in junior high, we were starting to see pot, and we were starting to see, I think like in 8th grade, I saw met somebody that had cocaine on them, and, as a young guy, I was an athlete and stuff like that, but we tried things, we experimented with stuff. I don't know how you were with that.
I was no saint.
Right. So I mean, and then all of it's the same. I'm not a big drinker now, and I'm not a big drug user, at all. But it was all there, and I didn't hear about it the way I hear about it today. It's like it's fun, and I mean, we have other addictions now. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm addicted to my phone.
I think we're all addicted to something.
Something, yeah, yeah. I mean, and so there was a question on Facebook too about addictive personality, and I've always used that as something, because I chewed tobacco forever, and then one day, 16, 17 years ago, I just set it down. I never picked it up again. Right. And I mean, I chewed on a regular basis, where I always had it in my back pocket. Every jeans pair had the ruined pocket in it, and I set it down, never picked it up again. And it didn't bother me. I just decided one day I wasn't going to chew anymore. Tried cocaine, never decided at 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning that I had to go do more of it. So I always felt like I was a person that didn't have, quote unquote, an addictive personality, where other people at 5 a.m. were like headed to Chicago Heights to score more coke.
Sure.
And I was like, you guys are going to have problems. And they end up having problems. So I don't know if that's a stigma that is person to person, that one person's more susceptible. We've all seen the studies where they put the monkey or the rat in the cage and they give it the 2 bottles of water, the one that's water and then the one that's got cocaine in it, and then the rat ends up killing himself with that. I saw another one, though, that they did in Denmark or Sweden or something like that they made the cage that the rat was in.
A rat park.
Rat park.
Yep.
And
it gave him other fun things to do.
He had plenty of sex. He had plenty of foods that he liked. He had plenty of entertaining things, he could chase things around, all the other stuff. And they gave it the 2 waters, and he chose the regular water, not the cocaine. Right. So what are we doing wrong? You're someone that's probably spent a lot of time. When I got injured, I spent a lot of time looking at the ceiling trying to figure out, how to end up here, sort of a thing. My cat might want to join the podcast here. But
everybody needs a little love.
Right. So, what do you come up with as a guy who was put into this situation? As what are we doing wrong? Because our suicide rates are going way up too.
Yeah.
I mean, just regular suicide, not by drug. And I mean, I think I'm hearing that middle-aged men are jumping in a huge way, suicide-wise.
Yeah. Well, I think the substance abuse and mental illness walk hand in hand. I mean, when you're medicating to extreme, you're killing the pain. You're trying to get rid of the pain. So again, the question: why are we in so much pain? That we feel the need to, escape. Reality. Why is it so bad? And as a society. And I believe this is a societal problem. It's all of our problems, even if you don't think you're affected yet, you are. But if it's not directly in your family, God bless you. But everybody's labeled. You're tall, you're short, you're fat, you're skinny, you're black, you're white, you're Republican, you're Democrat.
Right.
How does someone growing up? How does somebody fit in? I've voted Republican before I voted Democrat.
Sure.
I don't align myself either way. I try to look for a good candidate, who's going to make a difference. So, I think it's a lot tougher, especially for the younger generations growing up nowadays, to find out who they are, to fit in,
Sure,
because you're not this or you're not that, but you have to associate with somebody,
Right.
And it's just the stigma around the substance abuse, the stigma around mental illness, I think is the biggest thing that has to change. When I was growing up, I'm a little bit older than you, but
right.
In the 60s or 70s, and you said, "Oh, I'm going to go see a psychologist," someone would look at you and say, "Oh, you're crazy."
Yeah. Right,
and that was.
Right.
That's
yeah, and I think I would have grown up with the same stigma there, like, oh, it must have some problems, or you can't handle this. But I as a guy that's like 48 years old now, I don't know. I think I think that's the thing that I can see people lacking, is just having that ability to talk to somebody.
Right.
Just
Connection.
on a regular basis to have a talk. I mean, part of the reason that I picked up the podcast stuff was I'm a real estate broker and a general contractor. I'm super busy this time of year, all summer long. But January, February, December, it's super slow.
Yep.
So I spend a lot of time just heading up to the Midtown pub for tacos in the afternoon, and we'll sit for 3 hours and talk, or have a couple of buddies out. We do 6 hours of just talking,
Right.
because looking at your phone all day long, and that's not
No.
it's not a good way to do it. And then the Facebook thing and all the social media, I relate that to the same thing as when you're driving in your car. Somebody cuts you off in your car, you're flipping them off, you're hollering at, all these obscenities at them, stuff like that. But if you're at the grocery store and they did the same thing, you wouldn't do that. Like, you would not, you know what I mean? Like, you're right there with them and stuff like that. Like, it wouldn't be the same situation. So I don't think people are getting the dopamine that they need from human connection and with the phone, because you're totally connected all the time, but you're not getting that eye contact. You're not getting that, like. Also, the text format sucks because people add in their own attitude to stuff and everything else, where like you can get more of a understanding of what someone's saying. And we probably already talked in 15 or 20 minutes more than you could text in a day on social media, as far as that goes. So the people need to have. It seems strange, but therapy would be a terrific thing if everybody went somewhere and had someone to talk to.
Yeah, raising your hand and asking for help because of a mental illness, because of your anxiety, because of your depression, should be no different than going to the doctor because you got a sore throat.
Right. And the other thing I saw that a lot of people need to change their stance or their feeling about addiction is they want to push that person away because they feel like, okay, you're dirty and bad, and you're gonna probably steal out of my wallet, and
it might be contagious.
Right. Well, I don't know about that, but right. But they want to push them away because they don't want the chance of getting hurt by this person who's obviously got some issues with substance abuse. So, but what should be done is you should pull that person closer.
Absolutely.
Get them tighter to you and try and find out, what can we do, man, to get this. But
again, you're asking, what's the pain? What's the pain? Why are you hurting so bad?
Right. And some people, nowadays, I hate, that people are so offended by everything because some of that's like just fake outrage. But I'm always amazed when I see people that are suicidal or upset about, they're jealous of other people's lifestyle that they see on their social media. Jealous of the food they're eating, the cars they're driving, the women they're sleeping with. All that kind of stuff makes it, hurts the guy in his brain because he's not getting that stuff. But you're only seeing exactly what this other person's putting forward, and some of it's all fake. It's just bullshit. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a human connection problem that we're having, but when did this epidemic start? Because the things I read were the areas in Ohio and West Virginia where the coal mining was at were hit the hardest with these people that were prescribed. The one town was prescribed some like ludicrous, like there was something like 70,000 people in the whole 3-town area, and they were prescribed over 7 million pills in like a year or something crazy. And I mean, people got to do some math. 7 million and 70,000 is not a close number.
No.
And these people are taking a lot of pills. So like, how can we like draw it back to the start of this thing, and then, I hate to ask you big questions like, how do we get out of this? How do we get? Because it's a massive. When someone says 70,000 people are being killed a year, that's a massive number.
Yes.
So
200 people a day.
In your opinion, how do we move forward? What needs to be done? Well, if you were to pass, you got a magic wand and you're going to pass legislation. What do you do?
You know what? I don't usually spend time thinking that big. I try to just help my community. What needs to be done. Here again, there are people who are living with chronic pain and who don't abuse these drugs, and these drugs have a place, I believe, in our in some people's lives. But the people with, like you said earlier, that may have an addictive personality, that may have a mental illness, that may be suffering from depression or anxiety. Some people's brains, we're all wired differently, And some people, they get in a car accident, they break their leg, they get the prescription of Vicodin for a whole month, and it's off to the races. They find out that they don't have any breaks. This is that feeling they've been looking for their whole life because they've been dealing with pain, trauma. I think there's a big link between trauma and addiction. That pain, that baggage that we carry around, on our shoulders all our life. So,
you say trauma, do you mean like someone that their uncle raped them or something like that? Is that
sexual? There's a huge correlation between sexual abuse and addiction. We didn't know until my son passed away that he was sexually abused by a neighbor. When he was probably 11 or 12 years old, he had confided in his counselor. They were working on him getting enough courage to tell us about it, but we never got to that point.
Wow.
And I could see in his eyes that he was carrying around some baggage. I asked him almost daily. I would tell him, Jake, you're carrying around some baggage or something that's holding you back. He wanted to be clean and sober. He had put together periods of, I think the longest was probably about 6 months. He was 17. He was just shy of his 18th birthday when he passed away, a senior in high school. So he had put together some time. 6 months was probably the longest, in the 4 or 5 years that he dealt with addiction. But the trauma could be anything. Trauma is different for everybody, and what some person can handle, another person can't. The death of a dog, the death of a parent, the breakup of a girlfriend, the loss of a job, trauma. Many different. A car accident. I heard somebody even told me that you were you were breached as a baby or something, or you had a C-section. There's trauma in our lives, and everybody's brain deals with it a little bit differently.
That was my question. I didn't know if you said, obviously I broke my neck. I was through trauma. They gave me morphine and I've had multiple surgeries and all that stuff every single time. And I mean, the last 2 times I said, hey, listen, could you not just wait till I wake up from this other cocktail of drugs you gave me,
right? So
that then I can decide whether I need something or not. Because I hated waking up and I look over and there's that dripping, and I feel like hazy daisy. I was not, honestly, I won't say that I was being pervious to that, but I have felt that high, a morphine high, and the very first time I felt it, I think it was 8 or 9 days that I was on that drip, because I was opened up like a pork chop on the back of my neck, and I was high for a good almost 2 weeks, and when I came off it, I felt terrible.
Withdrawals.
I had a detox, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm.
And I never wanted to feel that feeling again. The next time I felt it, I'm like, oh, I don't like this at all.
Yeah.
The last surgery I had, I told them, please, no morphine. I don't want anything like that. And they, didn't even ask me if I was do you have a problem with that? Nothing. I was put out for the surgery, opened up again. My neck was opened up, and this is 7 or 8 years ago. And when I woke up, they had the frickin' drip going on there, and I was mad. I'm like, hey, I told you this is, I didn't, we didn't. And I'm like, you write down everything. Why wouldn't this be written down?
Right.
So I think it's certainly a go-to for sure for anyone that's in the medical industry. And
that's a whole other tangent we could go off on. It's years. I'm not big on statistics and numbers and everything, but years ago, the American Medical Association made pain, one of the indicators of healthy living, whatever. And so now, and they want to treat your pain. They want you to treat your pain, and because of the world that we live in, doctors are rated. If you don't get a good score on your rating from your patients, what's going to happen? You might be dropped from your practice.
Right,
exactly.
Right.
So let's treat. Let's overtreat. Let's give 30. Let's give a morphine drip when you don't need it. Let's give 30 Vicodins for a wisdom tooth that's pulled where maybe you need 2 or 3.
Sure. Or none. I mean, I'm a wisdom. I mean, I was a guy who got my fair share of fights, and then for a hobby would go get punched in the face to box and stuff like that. So my pain threshold's pretty good, but I had my wisdom teeth pulled. I was self-employed. I had the choice, no insurance, choice of they could put you under, or they could just give you the local in your mouth and everything else, and the cost was astronomically different to be put under. And I'm like, well, you're just going to be shooting shots in my mouth. So they did that, and I don't know. I got some pretty tough teeth. This guy's like standing on the chair, whacking away, trying to get these teeth out of there. He's sweating up a storm and everything else, and he was like, I'm going to have to stop. And I'm like, I got all this gauze in my mouth. Are you winded? And he's like, no, your pain stuff's going to wear off. And I go, oh, no. You keep going. Let's go. This is hard enough as it is. So he kept going, whacking them out of there and breaking them up and everything else. And, he sent me home with a whole big bottle of whatever, codeine, Vicodin, whatever it was. I didn't take any of that crap.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to heal on that crap, so I don't want any of that. And then, my life's always been about I got to get back to work. I can't be, I'm not going to be laid up for 3 days because of my teeth. So, here I go. Headache and all, whatever. But and I think different people have different feelings about that. I went in for, like being a paralyzed guy, across the band where my paralysis line is, it feels like I'm dipped in hot oil. So it's like burning all the time. It's almost like if your foot was asleep and someone walked by and kicked your foot. But it's on all the time. So like when I first got injured, 4 or 5 days I didn't sleep because I was like, what the hell is going on here? Someone's got to figure this out. So they started giving me all these different things and stuff like that. And then they sent me to a pain management doctor. This guy was going to prescribe me whatever, all I had to do. And pain is something that there's no scan, you can't see it.
Right.
He was going to give me whatever. So I mean, I don't even. It would be so easy for someone to be a narcotic seeking person with a doctor.
Yeah.
So.
And that's what happens is once somebody becomes dependent on whatever they're using,
right.
They know what to say. They know what to tell the doctor. And so often it's what they call polysubstance abuse, where it's not just one thing. I mean, you don't find just a heroin addict. I mean, a heroin addict is willing to do whatever it takes to kill the pain.
Sure.
Heroin works the best. But
right.
if there's no heroin, they'll do cocaine, they'll drink, they'll smoke pot, they'll crystal meth, whatever's available, Xanax,
right?
benzodiazepines.
I was surprised to hear there's a reason that drug addicts go to cocaine, or not cocaine, heroin, is because it's cheap.
It is cheap.
I that blew me away. I was surprised. I was kind of thought like, okay, marijuana, that was something that just wasn't my thing when we were kids because it made people go to sleep. It was like, that's not my thing. But it was cheap. You could get, $15 worth of this and get, a couple joints out of it or whatever like that. Where, and then cocaine was a little bit more. And I always figured if you're stepping up the effects or whatever, then you're going to be stepping up the cost as
right.
well. But a lot of these people turn to heroin because the prescription drug's outrageously expensive,
mm-hmm.
but the derivative, the heroin, is incredibly cheap.
Dirt cheap.
That
$10 for a little bag.
Yeah, well, yeah, we learned that one too. I was in New Orleans, and this woman who was sort of attractive walked up and propositioned me for $13, and I looked at her and I go, $13? This is what you're asking for? Is I was blown away. So I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not going to pay for sex. And $13, I'm like, oh my God, what do you have? Like, what? This is horrible. Not 2 hours later, another woman, same thing, propositioned me, and it was like $14 or $12. Some other weird number that was like, I'm like, what the hell? So got in a cab at some point, and I said to the cab driver, like, all right, man, I got to ask. I was propositioned twice tonight on the street by street walking women, and they were looking for like small numbers. Like, that's exactly what she needs to get her fix, and that's it. Mm-hmm. She's not interested in eating. She's not interested in anything. She'll do whatever it takes to get that $13 to go get that fix, shoot up, and be done for the night.
Because unfortunately, what drives people to do things that they wouldn't normally do is because if they don't get their fix, they go through those withdrawals.
Right.
And those withdrawals are hell.
Sure. Now, okay, so my understanding of it, and I keep going back to the science of it, and I mean I want to get onto the how people and we deal with that stuff, but so your brain releases dopamine when you get things like your favorite food, mm-hmm. when you get sex stuff right. like that, and the documentary I watched said that heroin is something like 180 times the dopamine of sex.
Right. I Imagine what that feels like.
Yeah,
I don't know.
No, I don't either. Right. But I mean, I can't even, and I totally can. That made me totally understand, because sex is wonderful. That why someone would want to go. I got to get right back here again. I mean, that seems to me. I mean, if I could wrap up the good feeling I had from 180 sexual encounters in one shot, it seems like a scientist somewhere would have found that out and been like, holy shit, we got to shelf this stuff because this is trouble.
Yeah.
Like, this is, I mean, you would think there'd be smart people somewhere that would be like, we've got to get a handle on this. But, so, but your field would be more about how families and stuff cope with these situations.
Right.
In your time doing it, I got to ask, I mean, how long have you been doing the group?
I've been running my own group for 3.5 years.
3.5 years?
Yep.
And so from my understanding of addiction, there are no success stories. No one ever beats it where you're like, you're done. It's a lifelong thing you're going to have to deal with.
You know what, that's what most people say. I keep an open mind. I don't... If you take a scale from 0 to 10, and 0 is rock bottom where they're doing all kinds of drugs and heroin, whatever it is, crystal meth, their life is miserable, and 10 is being, 100% abstinence and their life is good and they have no drugs. I mean, isn't getting to 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 better than being at 0? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Incremental change is still change. Yeah. That's good, for sure. Yes.
So, studies say that the vast majority of people that experiment with drugs just quit. They just they don't find enjoyment anymore, or they give it up, or it's not. It's an environmental thing maybe, where they were working somewhere and they had a connection and they partied all the time, but then they move on to another job, or they change towns or something and they don't do it anymore. Now that's not everybody.
Right.
Some people, like that we said, there is a brain component there that brains are wired differently, and some people just don't have those breaks to be able to stop. But my experience talking with people who have suffered from substance abuse that would call themselves addicts would tell you that, yeah, they're an addict for the rest of their life. Is that everybody though? I keep it, like I said, I keep an open mind. I think some people. I did a lot of partying when I was younger. I did a lot of cocaine. I don't anymore.
Right.
And I never suffered any real consequences. I didn't lose my marriage. I didn't lose any jobs. And I was able to say, I'm kind of getting old with it. I grew out of it, I guess.
Sure.
So
now my friend that put me in contact with you was a guy who, to my knowledge, has never done a drug in his life. Mm-hmm. And so I mean, you got, what I'm trying to show is just that you've got both ends of, or anywhere in the spectrum. You're a guy that partied and stuff like that. I'm a guy that partied and stuff like that. And our friend Hank wasn't a guy that did that. He was a guy that had some beers and stuff like that. Like, I was floored completely. I was knocked out of my socks when someone told me what had happened with his son passing away. And I was like, no. And I mistook his other son, who I had met a bunch of times, for the guy who had passed away. And I'm like, this can't be. Someone's got the wrong information. So, like, there's, whether they say that people that I know there's people out there that were partiers that are like, well, I'm not worried about that because I know all the tricks. They can't get away with anything with me. I was in that situation. I'll sniff that out right away.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
Yeah. You never know.
No. And I try and, with my sons, I know there's no way for me to prevent, something from happening. They're going to have to do it on their own, or however it works. I just try and have as many talks with them as I can. Like, hey, man.
That's where the education is key. Yeah.
Right. There's nothing that you're going to do in your life. I go, hey, if you're out tomorrow night and you murder a family of 5, we're going to have to go from that point and figure out what we're going to do from then. But you're going to come talk to me about it because I'm the only person in the world that's on your side 100%. Yeah. So, we need to figure this out. But, and I don't even know in that situation, I think removing the stigma has to help. Because I think there's got to be kids that are embarrassed to come to their parents and say,
"Oh, sure,
I'm screwed up on this situation."
Yeah. How did I get here?
Yeah, because my dad's thought on drugs, and he was a guy that smoked pot and stuff in the '60s, and he was like, "If you do drugs, I'll kill you." Like he was going to rule me with an iron fist, like, sort of a deal, which had zero effect on me. None.
Right.
I was like, that's not, you're going to kill me for something tomorrow anyway, so whatever. But and I had another buddy of mine, Bob. We went over to his house. His parents were kind of hippies, and my dad had just said this to me like a week before that. We went over to Bob's to pick him up to head out for the night. We were going to drink. We were going to do whatever. We were going to party somewhere. And Bob wasn't a heavy drinker. He was not a drug user. His mom looked at him and goes, Bobby, if you tried drugs, be careful, okay? And she just went into a whole thing like, you don't know where they come from. You don't know what's in there, all this other stuff. And the conversation that she had with her son, I was like, damn, I'm not going to do any drugs. She's right.
It worked better.
Yes,
right?
It worked totally better. She made complete sense. Who knows what somebody put in this when they sold it to me? You can't get me to take an Advil right now because I don't want that to jack up my stomach. So why would I take some powder that I have no idea if there's baby laxative, B6, whatever the hell's in there? But people take street drugs all the time. You have broken glass. Everything else is in there. So that to me, like the stigma could go, just trying to, like, in the past week or so, really try and brainstorm on how to parent deal. Take the stigma away, man. You better start talking to them, like,
absolutely.
Make them your equals in this situation.
You're not going to be able to control them. You're not going to be, you're not going to be with them 100% of the time.
No.
They're going to make decisions. Give them the skills to make the right decisions.
Right. Well, that's my other thing on social media that I can't stand is the. Do you have a daughter?
Yes.
Okay, I do too. And I see these stupid memes with a guy with a shotgun or a machine gun or something. And it's like, he's coming to date my daughter, and he's got the gun. He's got a T-shirt with the gun and the daughter. And I'm like, listen, dude, put the gun away, because that's not going to do anything. If that dude's going to bang your daughter, he's going to bang your daughter if she lets him. And then secondly, start talking to your daughter. Start having a rapport with your daughter so she makes better choices rather than you can't
get her to respect herself.
Right. Don't and there's women out there that have sex for all kinds of weird reasons, right? They have sex because, dad didn't pay enough attention to them. They have sex because somebody paid too much attention to them. All that stuff goes on. So you never know what's going on in somebody's head. You're not going to stop them by threatening anybody's life as far as that goes, because I don't know. I'm sure there's been a parent out there that has dealt with addiction that they thought, I'll chain them up, I'll lock them up, I'll handcuff them to the damn bed.
Sure.
And that's going to somehow solve it. You got to get inside that head. You got to somehow make it their choice to do that thing that's different. Like that DiCaprio movie Inception, where they like make the guy believe that he thought up the idea, sort of a deal. Like you got to somehow get like to there. So the stigma, and then what else? I mean, what else would be? What would you do? Or why would you do it differently?
How would I do it differently? Oh boy. It's the same things that you hear over and over. Just be involved with your kids in your kid's life, and we were. Probably the biggest thing, when I look back on it now, the hindsight, when it was a change in friends, when it all started happening was a change in friends, and not getting to know those kids, getting to know their parents, getting to, a better grip on what was happening. My kids were bright. They were, athletes. I thought they had the coping skills. I thought they had, the brains to be able to say no. But the old adage is, if you hang around a barber shop long enough, eventually you get a haircut.
Sure.
So if that's where if that's where you're hanging out, and that's, I saw the change. I saw the change in friends. And that's really, where it started, because, my daughter, I talk about my daughter too. My daughter's in recovery.
Okay.
My daughter, she was she didn't quite fit in. She dealt with anxiety, she didn't know where to fit in and what group accepts everybody, and that's the group that are doing drugs. They're all Misery Loves Company, and all the Misfits,
Right.
Misfit Island, from the old Christmas story, when Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, where all the Misfit toys go and live together happily.
Right.
So, the biggest thing, here again, when I found out there was heroin in our neighborhood and kids started dying, and they were doing it in high school, I was just blindsided, and I started on this mission to learn as much as I possibly could about addiction and the drugs. Opioids are getting all the attention now, but it's much bigger than that. Methamphetamine and the prescription drugs, the benzodiazepines, the Xanax. Xanax, I read an article a couple years ago, Xanax being the number one abused drug by grammar school kids.
Well, yeah, some of this is, now there's certain situations that I look at that I'm like, this has got to be on the parents, because there's kids that are, my sons were diagnosed with ADHD at like 6 years old. 6 years old, they were like, it was said that they're going to need something. My one boy was like, even in school, he had to sit on the bouncy ball, in the class. He's just constantly moving and everything else. And for us, my remedy, and I'm not saying that this is a remedy in any way, shape, or form, was I'm going to put that kid in wrestling, because it's going to be such strenuous workouts that, we're going to try and take care of it this way. But there's parents that are loading their kids up on Adderall at 7 or 8 years old. That's got to have an effect on a brain, as far as that. And Xanax, and Xanax is a Valium, right? Like it's a
benzodiazepine. Valium. Yeah,
Valium,
yeah,
right? Same thing, right?
Mood stabilizer.
Yeah, right.
No,
So like that's got to have. I don't know what the.
And again, I don't try to get too extreme on that kind of stuff. I mean, because you'll have parents out there, maybe parents who are watching this, that will say how much those drugs are helping their kids. My son can study now. My daughter's getting better grades. That. But there's got to be some kind of connection there, like you said. Especially when a young adult, pre-adult, teenager, preteen is taking blue pills from the doctor, and then he goes to school and Johnny's got red pills, and hey, well, these pills help me, I wonder what those pills do. So the thinking in the brain is saying that these help me, why don't I try, hey, let's swap and see what happens. So the sharing, the sharing of well,
the Adderall speed.
Yeah.
So you're just taking speed.
It's methamphetamine.
Right.
Basically.
And I mean, for me, I'm not even a coffee drinker. I won't even, I'm wired all the time as it is. I see people that are dependent on coffee, and it's a big joke and all that other stuff that, I got in my
it's illegal. It's legal.
It's legal,
just
right.
like what you were talking about earlier, tobacco.
Tobacco,
it's legal, so leave it alone.
Yeah, right.
Because we don't want to mess with all the advertising dollars.
Right. And I don't know, I think there's... I always my brain always goes to how to get to the root and solve the problem. And I know that some problems, they're not solvable. They're not situations that you can do that.
It's love and compassion for everybody.
Right.
The labeling, like I was talking about earlier, how we're so much pitted against each other. Again, Republicans and Democrats, black and white. It's just you're either on this side or you're on that side. Why can't we just all be together? With all the memes going on Facebook after 9/11, my favorite meme was 9/11 was the worst day in our country. 9/12 was the best day in our country, because we were all united.
Sure.
And that's the one thing that I like to say that kind of dawned on me. I've been on this journey. I lost my son 5.5 years ago, but I've been on this journey for I guess about 8 years. At the end of this epidemic, the world will be a kinder and gentler, more compassionate place.
Sure.
Because we'll have a better understanding of people's hurts, and
I hope so. So.
I mean,
now, your daughter, is she older or younger than?
Older.
Older.
Yeah, year and a half older.
Now, how is she? She had to be greatly affected by losing her brother.
Absolutely. I mean, both my children were using heroin in high school. They never used together.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's how big of a problem. And that's something that struck me, too. There were so many different cliques of people using heroin. It wasn't just like one group. It was all over the place.
Right.
You know,
Now
so
you said your son was an athlete. What was he? What did he?
swimmer and water
Okay.
polo. Yeah,
How do
my
you
daughter.
get by? Now, okay, when you say he was using heroin, see, I'm lost in all that. Like, the heroin that I know is they put it in a needle and shoot it up.
Yeah.
Is that the way they were taking
Well,
it?
I mean, that's part of the, you know, when it became so readily available and much more pure, a lot of the heroin is snortable. So
Okay.
you get away from that stigma. Here, let's do a line. Or you think you're doing a line of cocaine, and you know you do a line of
Pulp
heroin.
Fiction set
Yeah.
where she.
So you know you lose that stigma of, oh, I'm never gonna, needles, I don't like that stuff. You
Yeah.
don't have to shoot up to try heroin.
Okay, see, I wouldn't
you know?
even. Yeah, I wouldn't even
Yeah,
know.
you can snort a line of heroin, but here's what happens: once you get hooked and you become dependent on it, the snorting isn't as attractive anymore as, that guy over there is shooting up, and wow, he's,
Just straight to the blood.
Yeah.
It's faster and
yeah,
more
absolutely,
potent.
absolutely.
Okay, because your
So
liver
it leads. I
detoxes
mean,
it.
sure, are there people that never, that use heroin and never shoot up? Yeah, there are, but it's a progression, that I think happens in most people. That
Sure.
they'll eventually shoot up. So both of my children were IV heroin users in high school.
Okay.
Crazy.
Now, right. No, it's
Crazy.
to me, my head would explode.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time with my sons. Like I so much to the point where it's like when they go away to school, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do because I'm a wrestling coach, so I'm at practice with them. They work for me all summer and doing construction, and then they're here for dinner. Like a couple nights a week, and every weekend they're here working too. So, but I still don't ever have any false notion that they could just get that right by me because I don't know enough about that situation. I think they could get it right by me. I try and give them a side eye every once in a while to make sure what's going on there and stuff like that. And I got no whiff of anything, and they're pretty open with me about they're appalled by some of their friends that smoke pot. Yeah. Now, how are you on that? Like, do you feel like that stuff's because now they're legalizing pot in Illinois. So do you think there are people out there that think that's supposed to help this situation because they'll turn to the legal cheap, pot that you can buy from wherever, dispensary, versus getting street drugs, heroin.
Yeah, again, I think it falls back in. I do believe that marijuana has some medicinal values. Okay. I smoked pot for a big portion of my life too.
Okay.
But I was never,
See, now I like this time
for
because
me,
I'm surprised by the things that you're saying because I was really thinking I was going to run into a guy that had no prior history with any of that stuff,
no.
And then boom.
I'm pretty street smart with all the drugs,
right?
But I just never came across heroin or opiate. I was never a downer person. I've never taken any pills. I've never taken an antidepressant. I've never taken a Xanax. I had a Valium once, and that was before I had my mastectomy. But yeah, is that what you call it? No, that's for a woman.
Yeah, breast reduction.
When I got snipped, for lack of a better word.
Yeah,
vasectomy.
Right.
I had a Valium once, but I was always an adrenaline freak. I always,
Sure.
But I used the marijuana, I think, more as control anxiety and like that. Again, I don't use it now, but so I think it has a place. But again, I think it goes back to the person and what they're, what kind of pain they're trying to hide. I led a pretty happy lifestyle. Did I make mistakes? A ton of them. Did I do some bad things that I'm ashamed of? Of course I did. But I never let them dwell and never let them, weigh me down.
Right.
Now for a person, here I definitely don't think 21 years old. Yes, are younger kids going to have easier access to it? Yeah, probably. But guess what? They already do. So I'm not pro or anti. It's going to happen.
I was really surprised as a young guy. I was at a party and somebody had raided somebody's medical or like their medicine cabinet, and they had a whole mess of pills and they were taking them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you don't even know what that does?
Yeah, right.
Like, it freaked me out. I was like,
Skittles party.
Yeah, I was
the
like,
kids,
what?
The kids throw all the pills in a bowl
stuff.
and they just take when they don't know.
I'm like, I'm not touching any of that. Not for me at least. Like I couldn't even imagine it. And I wouldn't say that I had the happiest of childhoods. I mean, my home life was not a good one as far as that went. I remember being like completely relieved when my parents finally got a divorce. Like, thank God.
Yeah.
I was 15 years old, but I was thrilled. I'm like, holy cow. And I wasn't thrilled because 2 Christmases. I was thrilled because, you two people just don't belong in the same place together. But I still, couldn't imagine that going there and doing that sort of a thing where, from what I hear from kids nowadays, that's the norm. If you better watch your medicine cabinet sort of situation.
Absolutely. Lock everything up.
Yep.
If you're at home watching this and you don't have your medications locked up, go buy yourself a safe. They're
Right.
not that
That's
expensive.
exactly where I was going. I was looking, hoping you would say the same, right? Because that seems like the quickest way you could get yourself screwed up.
People go to grandma's house and steal her medications.
Right.
I've even you don't want anything in your medicine cabinet stronger than Tylenol or Advil.
Right. Okay. So that would be because from my knowledge of it is most people are the wrestler that we had heard about. He had hurt his knee, and they gave him pain pills to deal with the knee situation. He was like a sophomore when he hurt his knee. His entire junior year, he was laid up with the knee, but he was taking opioids the entire time. After junior year, he OD'd over the summer on heroin.
Yeah.
And came back senior year. I think he'll have this struggle the rest of his life. He came back senior year and won a state title after that, which I was completely surprised about. But yeah, he managed to do that. But like I said, from the things I've read, you're not out of the woods till you're. I don't know if ever. Like as far as that went, like you got to watch yourself.
I think and again, my personal opinion. I've never, I've taken opioids for pain, after surgery or something like that. But I was never that person. So,
right.
From what I've seen, I've never been there, so I have no idea what it's like. But from my eyes, from what I've seen with my children, from what I've seen with dealing with other people, is that class of drugs is really demonic.
Right.
You're dancing with the devil, and once you've gone there, it's a really slippery slope to take you right back there. You don't want to mess with that again.
Now, you said both of your children were intravenous heroin users in high school. Now, did they have people all around them that have? Were they constantly going to funerals and wakes and stuff like that? Because the circles that they were in had to be devastating.
There's been quite a few people from a couple years younger and a couple years older than my children, that have passed away.
Right.
So, and you'd think that would be enough, right? You see your friend die, you think that would be enough to make you walk away. The drug has such a strong grip on you.
Yeah, and I don't know what I don't stalk my kids on social media, which a lot of parents do, and sometimes I don't know if that's a mistake on my part or not, but I don't want to try and keep an eye on them that way. I want to try and have a rapport with them, but some of the stuff that my sons will show me, they're like, look at this idiot, and he's all about his nicotine habit or whatever he's doing, that he's talking about it. Some of that stuff is super cool as far as the other kids go, I think. I don't know. I still think that growing up, if anybody had heroin, I don't think it was cool.
No, I would have punched him in the face. If somebody said, hey, you want to do some heroin?
Right.
I would have punched him in the face.
Right. Yeah, because it seems like something that would be totally devastating where,
well, here's something that I've also come to believe, and it may not be 100% true, but I think it's definitely partially true. When we were kids, you could just go to the corner liquor store and hang out outside and ask some guy to buy you a 12-pack of beer, and he would.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now you can't do that anymore. There's laws, and they crack down. And
sure, they're carding you.
If you got caught with beer in your car, the cops would make you dump it out, and they'd let you go. Stuff like that. Things have changed for the better. But now for a high school kid, I think it's easier for them to get a bag of heroin than a 12-pack of beer.
That's interesting that you say that too, because we used to get into fights a lot when we were young guys, and you get in a fight, you'd fight the guy. A lot of times you become friends with the guy. Nothing was nothing. And then I noticed, 20 years later, kids got into fights, and it's in the police blotter, and they're in jail and everything else. And I'm like, I don't know if arresting this kid for getting into a fist fight is the best idea in the world, because you're screwing his life up. Then maybe he turns to drugs or something like that because he's depressed that his life
because he's labeled as a bad kid.
Right, as a bad kid or something like that. Or there was a couple of people that it seems like our system is so backwards. We take a kid who is messed up with drugs, or he gets caught stealing or fighting or whatever he does, and you actually take him out of his school and you put him in a special school for kids that have behavior issues. And then all you're doing is putting him in a situation where he's around more kids that are doing the same thing. They just find better ways to do those same things. Like you're just it's a downward spiral.
Exactly what happened with my son.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was, he was in treatment over Christmas of his junior year, and he was afraid to come home because people were dying, and he was afraid of the heroin. I had to withdraw him from Lincoln Way School and enroll him up in Rockford East. He went his junior year up in Rockford East. He stayed in the treatment. They had a sober living home.
So that's a school that's designed especially for that situation.
It was a public school, but he was afraid to come home. He lived up there in a sober home with other kids his age who were also in treatment.
Yeah.
And he stayed sober his whole that whole spring semester of his junior year. Did really well. He was happy. Again, as a naive parent, I thought he was fixed. I said, okay, he's got it this time. 6 months clean.
Yeah.
6 months substance free, I should say. I don't like to use the word clean and dirty, but
right.
He came home.
That's good advice. Yeah.
Yeah, because words matter.
Yeah.
That's part of the stigma.
Right.
But he came home for his sister's graduation in the beginning of June, and did okay at home for a couple of months. As soon as he went back to high school at the end of August, he got sucked right back in.
Back to Lincoln Way schools?
Yeah.
Oh wow! I hear that the Central's got some serious trouble at Central.
Every school does. I don't want to say one school is worse than others. I mean,
right.
They all do. I think New Lenox is the community is doing a great job as far as trying to get ahead of the curve.
What are they doing?
What's
going on in New
They're holding events. They're holding awareness events. The mayor does an amazing job of supporting everything. There's several different groups in our community that kind of do awareness, like what I think that I do, helping people, different support groups, stuff like that. But the drug the medicine, the take back boxes, that are at the police station, turn in your unused medications. The police department has what they call like a safe passage program. If you want to come into the police department, you tell them that you need help. They won't arrest you.
That's outstanding.
Put you into treatment.
All you're doing is making it worse. You arrest the kid.
Yeah,
I mean, you're
right.
just making his life terrible.
Just letting them know that help is available.
Right,
and that's
right.
the message. But anyway, getting back, my son, when he went back to his senior year, he got sucked right back in. He ended up overdosing on Klonopin, which is another benzodiazepine. It was the Friday before Labor Day weekend, so he was back in school a week, 10 days maybe,
wow.
And he got sucked right back in. He was getting, from what I was told by an eyewitness, he was getting pills from somebody on the school bus, was sharing their medication, and
right.
He overdosed in school. He was totally out of it in gym class. They rushed him to the hospital, and and then they expelled him. So he went to that alternative school that you were talking about,
right.
And that was their solution. Put all the bad kids in one room together and let them fix each other.
No, right. That's not. You put all the criminals in the same place. You just figure out to be better criminals.
In my mind, that's what sealed his fate because he lost all hope. He was so disconnected with normal life. That he just couldn't, and by that time he had burned some of his bridges with good friends that had been, friends most of his life, and so then he was hanging around with younger kids, because younger kids attract you to the older kid, and he went through a lot of friends and good people, that he might have hurt or harmed or stolen from or something like that. It was ugly, he ended up passing away in March. So he went to that school for 6 months or so, and he just couldn't. It was easy. He was a smart kid. He would do a week's worth of online, to get his high school diploma. He would do a week's worth of work in one day, and then he'd spend a whole week doing nothing.
Right.
He just,
Sure.
But he
See,
wasn't.
I had to keep myself in. Went to a wake, and the young guy had died of a heroin overdose, and there was the whole group there had to be 25 of this guy's friends. I say that lightly because I don't know if those people are his friends or not.
Right.
Neck tattoos, and they looked a mess, all of them. And they're all out there smoking and vaping and everything else. And my gut reaction was, you sons of bitches. Like, this is your fault, you people out here. That's the wrong tack. Those people, if those people got the same problem, someone needs to get them and help them with some sort of kindness. Not, my first reaction was to be aggravated with these people that he's running around with. But I mean, these are all human beings too. They got the same issues going on. Like that, the stigma thing, that's a difficult one to take yourself out of. Because, I mean, it seems like a dirty situation. It seems like a bad, crowd as far as that goes.
I'm sure at my son's wake there was people who were high, on heroin.
Right.
But every person that walked through that line, I gave them a hug and told them to take care of themselves.
Yeah, right.
What's that? I wanted nothing more. I wasn't a revengeful person. Even though when I heard found out somebody told me that who was giving them but my son didn't die of a heroin overdose. It was a combination. It was heart arrhythmia. He had 7 different drugs in his system. His heart gave out.
Sure.
But what he took that night was Xanax.
Okay.
It's like 4 or 5 bars of Xanax, and like I said, he had 6 different drugs in his system. But when he came back, when he was up in Rockford. For heroin use, to the best of my knowledge, he never used heroin again. I may be wrong, but he was definitely afraid of it. He wanted to be.
It almost seems like the wrong place to have a sober house. Rockford seems like
there's a good treatment center up there.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because Rockford, I've been through Rockford. Youth wrestling state was always in Rockford, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's like I went to Detroit or something. It's a pretty depressed area. Yeah, pretty bad. All right, I got some questions here from social media.
I was reading them.
Good. I'm glad you did. Seem like some pretty...
I'll do my best. Again, I'm no expert. But
No. Right. We just, the whole point with the podcast is I'm hoping that somebody can glean something. I run with a whole mess of people that their kids are good athletes, they're great students and stuff like that, but that's got nothing to do with this.
You have to be aware. You have to be educated.
Right.
Don't wait until it comes knocking at your door. Be ready.
Right, because then that's an uphill battle then.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so my friend Ernie says, what can people do to support others that are close to our family and friends? So, like, if you're secondary, like, what could someone do that's doesn't have their son's not, like, I'm at a loss for words when I talk to Hank. I don't even know what to say to him. I'm like,
what can you say?
No. And I mean, I'm sure there's a pre and post difference, right? What you could do for someone before and what you could do after is going to be different.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts?
Well, I think, talk about the pre first. I mean, you got a good friend, that one of his kids is struggling, and we all have that friend. Maybe it is our friend. What do you do to that person? You just show them love and compassion. You don't shy away from them.
Right.
Don't be afraid of them. Try to learn. Let them talk. One thing that I teach in my support group, the number one thing is, when we're talking about parents or spouses, who have a loved one who's struggling, is we got to take care of ourselves first. Self-care is number one. We can't, this monster, grabs a hold of our loved one, but it's not satisfied there. It wants to destroy the whole family. It wants to destroy marriages. It wants to destroy families. It wants to destroy your job, your career, everything. So, don't shun away from that person, that friend who's got a loved one who's struggling. Reach out to him. Just be an ear. Just be an ear and let them talk.
Right. Now, speaking of the pre, though, what I saw a documentary that was talking about, the psychology of it and stuff like that, but also like using stuff like methadone and stuff like that, because you don't get the euphoric high from methadone, but it somehow quells the craving for the drug. What are your thoughts on like
what's commonly
medicating that situation?
What's commonly known as medicated assisted treatment, which is the gold standard now for treating opioid abuse. Again, I have mixed feelings about it. I didn't like it when my high school kids were given Suboxone. Suboxone is the big thing now, but methadone here it helps some people. Some people who are chronic relapsers, some people who've been addicted for years and years and years, can take their dose of methadone every day and lead a relatively normal life.
Right.
There are some studies, some brain studies and stuff like that say that, some people's brains are damaged so bad that they'll never get that circuitry back. They'll never get that dopamine. They'll never,
Right. Because the brain study I saw said that the chronic use of the drug actually shuts down the dopamine receptors, so you have a harder time. That's why you need more and more.
Your body stops making the dopamine because you're given, because
so
you're using
much,
the drug.
Right.
So, and that's part of the other thing, going through withdrawals, and even after you're clean. Okay, I went through detox. I haven't used any heroin in a week. My system is clean of it, but I still feel like shit.
Yeah,
that's because your dopamine isn't working.
Right,
it's been shut down because it's it's been enhanced by the drugs for so long.
Right,
but,
right.
So the don't isolate yourself. Post if you know somebody who's lost somebody. Again, don't isolate. I've had people. Who I think have shied away from me. I've got a really good core group of friends and family that have always stuck by my side, some more than others. But saying things like you'll get over it, or time heals all wounds, or stuff, it doesn't. What I tell people, what I've come to realize over 5.5 years is the pain's never going to go away. The pain is in my gut, but my life grows around it. Okay, my life grows bigger. I bury that pain with new memories, new happy memories. But there's a shortcut to that pain, and it can, I can be back to that pain in an instant.
I bet. So like, there's people that even with the injury stuff, they want to like somehow console me, and like, the cliches. My advice always just stay away from the cliches. Don't say the things. Don't say the things that you think we're going to make, because there's no word you're going to say that's going to make anything different.
No.
So, and my least favorite one is everything happens for a reason. Don't say that. That's not a thing to say. I know it seems like comforting. It's not. That's not. That.
It's okay if I think that, but I don't want somebody else to tell me that.
Don't say it. Right. So, my thing also is when I don't want people to have. I know that. From talking with Hank, he was like, he had a stigma about himself. He felt guilty himself.
That's normal.
He somehow, and I was like, dude, I don't have that feeling about you at all. Like, there was not even a inkling of that. Like, I never, when it went down, I never one time thought to myself, man, what'd Hank do? Nothing came to mind like that. So don't even, I told him, don't even think about that ever, because I'm positive that's not the case. He's a square guy. So
there's a saying, when I'm in my support group, we tell the newcomers, you didn't cause it, you can't control it, and you can't cure it.
No,
but you can contribute to it, and that's a whole other story. Talking about enabling, but we can do that at another time.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, if you think of some stuff that we can cover, there's a lot of my podcasts. They're just interesting topics, stuff like this. I seriously hope that somebody could be helped by that. The experience that you've had. I mean, it's a terrible thing that you went through, and I just hope that there could be some good taken from it. But all right, so my friend Tim, who was on the podcast, says, I have heard the phrase addictive. We talked about this a little bit. Addictive personality, which means those affected more likely to abuse drugs and or alcohol. Sherlock Holmes, as a fictional character, as an example, seems to have an addictive personality through reverting to his cocaine habit when he didn't have cases to solve as related to in the stories. Can those with Can those with similar personality type become interested enough in some activity? Let me see what else he's got here.
Yeah.
That they would not need to resort to substance abuse.
Yeah, I think it's critical, especially for somebody, when somebody does get into recovery, somebody who's had a problem get into recovery, you have to stay busy. You have to replace that euphoria. Many people turn to exercise. They turn to, like I said earlier, we're all addicted to something.
Yeah.
But. But unfortunately, some of us are addicted to things that are really, really dangerous
Yeah,
and bad for
right,
us.
right. Other people are just addicted to looking at their phone all day, and then they realize that, oh my shit, the whole day went by. I got nothing
my
done.
neck hurts.
Yeah, my neck hurts. Right.
You can go to the doctor, but
exactly.
Keeping keeping yourself busy. Talk about Sherlock Holmes. He did cocaine when he didn't have a case to work on.
Yeah.
That was his coping skill.
Right. His mind was always working when he was on a case, but as soon as his mind wasn't working, he
needed something
to get high. Right.
Yeah, something to do. So,
yeah. Right.
But
I mean, do you buy into the addictive personality thing? Like some people are impervious to being addicted.
I believe there's some merit to that. We're just over the last 5 or 10 years really starting to learn about the brain and mapping the brain and how the synapses and everything is wired together and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So do I think that some people have that addictive personality? After all the people in recovery that I've talked to, they all say that we're just different. I'm wired differently.
Sure.
Well,
you can be wired differently because shit happened to you.
You may have an allergy to shellfish,
right?
But I have an allergy to alcohol and drugs.
Yeah, right. Right. Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. All right. How do you deal, my friend Lisa? How do you deal with an addict on a day-to-day basis? Do you act like life is normal?
Depends on who that person is, but again, the first thing that you need to do is take care of yourself. Your self-care, setting healthy boundaries, what you will and you will not accept. If it's someone living in your house, whether it's a child or it gets a little bit more difficult when it's a spouse, especially if the spouse is a breadwinner or something. But when you're dealing with children living in your house, it's your house. I will not accept drug use in my house. Right. I will not accept you living here at 23 years old and not helping to pay rent. I will not accept I have to wash your dish, clean your dishes and wash your clothes. You set boundaries, and it's nothing like crazy.
Right.
Just you need to be a productive member of this household.
Right. You got to walk that line of being an enabler where you're just coddling this person the entire time.
Right. Because if you coddle them, you'll bury them.
Right. Makes sense.
So I don't know if that helps Lisa at all or not, but again, when it's a spouse or something, it's a whole different dynamic. You can't. Here's something that I like to say is that I believe that the change we want to see in our loved ones starts with us. So if we start to change our behavior, if we stop, doing the enabling, if we set healthy boundaries, if we you're going to go out drinking tonight, I'm going to go to the gym. You're going to go out drinking tonight, I'm going to go out with the girls and whatever. You start taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
You start distancing yourself from the activity that you don't like, and you start you keep on growing.
Right.
Because if you don't, you'll get sucked in to that circus.
Sure. I always we had wrestling background in the house, and then got some guys that run a jiu-jitsu place and stuff like that. And there's a lot of people that struggle with food addiction, that they're just constantly eating, and they can't get in shape and everything else. And I'm like, listen, you gotta supplement that with something else. So instead of going for chocolate cake, you gotta go to a jiu-jitsu class tonight and take this up and be like, all right, my goal is that I'm going to compete in 2 months. Yeah. So I better break my ass out here getting this thing done. And maybe, just maybe, you might not spend as much time with the thing you don't want to do versus the thing that you do want to do.
Yeah, and it's important, for those of us that love someone struggling, change is difficult. We want our loved one to change. We want them to make a complete 180 and start walking the other direction.
Yeah.
Think about how hard change is in your life. You want to stop smoking. You want to exercise more. You want to, come home from work on time. You want to, change is very difficult for everybody. For somebody who's struggling with drugs, change is really, really, really difficult.
Right.
So that's where the love and compassion, trying to understand what's going on, again, supporting them without enabling them. That understanding that, hey, I know it's really tough for you.
Sure.
But it's going to take, it's 30 days of treatment typically doesn't work. What I like to say, treatment is great. I'm a big believer in treatment, but insurance companies want to pay 30 days and then you're done.
Yeah, right.
Treatment is one thing. Recovery is another thing. Recovery is what happens after treatment.
Sure.
My mistake when my kids were young, the first time they went into treatment, I thought they were cured. They were smart kids.
Yeah.
They won't do that stupid stuff again.
Right.
But it wasn't. I mean, recovery is when you take the tools you learned in treatment, the coping skills you learned in treatment, and you use them in your daily life. But that's the hard part. That's where the change comes in.
Sure, that's all the work, right.
Get away from them, the people, places, and things that sucked you in before.
Sure, everybody wants a magic pill to, for lack of a better term, to to make you skinny, to make you healthy, to knock your cholesterol down. What's crazy is the magic pill, those opioids, that's a magic pleasure pill right there.
Absolutely.
Because boy, they take that and you are happy.
They work.
Yeah,
they work.
Right. That's the problem with it is that it works like that. That's crazy stuff. All right, so another friend, Jenny, says, how do you deal with the lying? It is so hard to keep helping someone who is lying and doing drugs. So that's another kind of enabling setup, right?
Somebody who's caught up in their substance abuse, they're lying all the time. When their lips are moving, they're lying. Right. That's pretty much it.
A tough one.
I like to say, don't ask questions you don't want to know the answer to. Like, were you out drinking tonight?
Right.
What difference does it make? I mean, you probably already know he or she was.
Right, and they're not going to tell you the truth anyway.
What are you going to do if they tell you yes? Is it anything different than if they told you no? I mean, what are you gaining from it?
Yeah.
You're much better off, I think, just not ignoring it, but just saying, I can't support your unhealthy activities.
Right.
I will support your healthy activities.
Yeah, right.
But I can't support your unhealthy activities.
Yes, yeah. Boy, I try and my brain's in a quagmire over the whole thing. I don't know where I would do, how, I don't even know how. I know I'd overcompensate in so many ways. I'd be like trying to get them to do other activities in such a way that like they'd be so sick of me they want to kill me, as far as like, you're too involved in my life sort of thing.
When the monster does come knocking at your door, and even before, I mean, a mental health checkup, I loved going to the psychologist. I don't do it regularly anymore, but I did for a few years before and after my son passed away.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved someone telling me what was going on in my head and why it was going on in my head.
Yeah. I took a psychology class in college, and I thought it was awesome to like, even from like child psychology, just learning all the weird stuff like object permanence and stuff like that. Like little kids don't have that till a certain age, and then just the Pavlov's dog, where like just the way the mind works is pretty damn interesting to begin with.
Yeah.
And then I had a little bit of I think everybody that goes through a catastrophic injury has to have some sort of counseling to make sure that you don't kill yourself, sort of a situation. So they had a guy coming in like once a week, I think it was on Wednesday or something like that, and we would just talk. Hour and a half, we would just talk. And I tell you what, every single time I had an hour conversation with the guy, I felt better when he left. I'm like, we could have talked about anything, and I just felt better about it. I'm like, you know what? And that's for me, after I got injured and I got home, I found out that one of my favorite things to do was make some good food, maybe open a bottle of wine, and have a really good conversation with a bunch of people about whatever, about politics, about religion, whatever you want to talk about. Let's have this talk. As long as no one's feelings get hurt, we don't try and beat up on each other. Usually, you walk away with a pretty damn good feeling about
and you might have learned something.
Might have learned something.
You had an open mind.
Right. That's why I like the podcast stuff so much. So, all right. So, Leanne has a question here. It's how do you deal with an addict who is an ex and verbally abuses at every possible chance, in addition to being self-loathing to the point you can keep from blocking said person just for peace? Absolutely every chance they get. How do you try to rise above it and keep peace when it's clear it will never get peace?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult thing. Here's something else. I'm full of these things that I like to say, but your ex is dealing with some demons. He's drinking or abusing drugs, whatever. Self-loathing. It's self-hatred. He doesn't like himself. That his and I'm not really, I don't really want to get into a religious thing, but I use it as a euphemism or whatever. But his demons aren't satisfied with him. They want to destroy you too.
Sure.
And I get that all the time with my son's demons. They sit on my shoulder and tell me I was a bad dad. And, I've learned over the years to just listen to it and then kick it out,
Right.
The best revenge against you have your ex who is mean is for you to be happy.
Yeah. No, that would do it. Yeah, that would do it. You've been through this, sounds like, for a long time. Don't have your expectations too high. Don't expect him to change because he's probably not going to. Right.
That's what he's going to be. That's what you're going to get. But if you let it affect you, then his demons are winning.
Yeah,
They're
right.
taking
In that
you
situation,
over too.
Happiness is sort of a choice. You can just choose to be happy and not make that
And
matter.
I'm not saying that it's easy.
No, right.
But
I've made mistakes that I really regretted in my life, and you can't unring a bell. So I'm like, all right, this is where I'm at today. My accident was a situation that I've ran through my brain 1,000 times. Like, how could I have made that differently? How could I be walking around today instead of rolling around? And I can't dwell on that. I gotta just, okay, here's today. I gotta move forward, and then that's it. So, yeah, that's good advice. Yeah, the happier you are, you win that way.
Yep,
yeah,
you win.
Right. Okay, so Stacy, who's a nurse.
And I'll go back real quick. Anytime we're talking about abuse, physical abuse, call the police.
Oh yeah, no. Hopefully she's talking about verbal abuse, not
mental
physical.
abuse. Yeah.
And even that, call the police then, because the verbal might lead to physical, and you don't need that shit.
But if you're ever afraid for your life or whatever, you get assaulted or things are out of control, call the police. And either he's going to change and it won't happen again.
Right.
He won't make that mistake again because he doesn't want the police to come and doesn't spend the night in jail or whatever. Or
the self-loathing thing is a whole other basket of trouble too, because people that don't like themselves, it's impossible to be in a relationship with that person. As far as if you don't even like you, how are you going to like me?
Right.
Because I'm not you, and I'm going to kick your ass.
You can't love somebody if you don't love yourself.
Right.
You can't give away what you don't have.
My joke always, I don't care how good looking she is, she always becomes a pain in the ass sooner or later. So I mean, if you hate yourself, how are you going to have anything to? Because relationships are hard. Right. Relationships are real tough, and you got to give. It's a constant give. Sometimes I think being a single guy is the easiest thing in the world to do, just because I don't have to deal with. If I want to have a podcast, I'll have a podcast. If I want to watch TV, I'll watch TV. If I want to go work out, I go work out. If I want to eat a salami sandwich, I'm going to eat a salami sandwich. Where if you got a relationship, you got to if it's 3:30, you can't just make yourself a sandwich, because 5:30 is dinner time. She's coming home really pissed off. So it's always tougher to be in a relationship, and if you're in a relationship with someone who hates themselves. Holy cow! Yeah. That's got to be, that's another mind screw right there for sure. But all right, I got one last one from Stacy, who's a nurse, and she's got several questions. Stacy's I love her, but she's a little long-winded on Facebook. Hold on here. Let's see what she's got. Oh, it's not that bad. All right, she's got several questions. Do you consider this a disease? A personal weakness, poor life choice, or a way to deal with life?
It's a disease.
Right. That's
It's
that's the best way to deal with it.
It changes the brain chemistry. Prolonged use. It starts as a choice. Mm-hmm. We've all made bad choices before. But that's what the medical field says. It's a disease. That's part of the stigma. People say, well, why don't you just stop?
Right.
If people could just stop, we wouldn't have any addicts.
Sure. I don't look at it, from what I've read, I don't look at it like weakness. I look at it like there's For an addict, there's a need. Their brain needs that thing just like you need food.
Yeah.
They would take that over food.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't look at it like weakness. I look at it that they're wired in a way that.
So once the addiction sets in, it's definitely a disease because the way the brain works has been changed. Like we talked about earlier, it's not making dopamine.
They can physically see it. The scan they can take. Like I saw a whole thing on it. The brain is different.
Right.
They've got a brain of a heroin addict and a brain of a person that's not. And it's wired completely different.
What leads up to the addiction? The original choice. To use. It could be many different things. It could be that trauma that you're dealing with. You want to self-medicate. It could be the environment. You're hanging around. Everybody else is snorting coke. I might as well have a line too.
Sure.
It could be the environment. It could be,
right.
it could be, there's a lot of different things I think that lead people to that path. But once the addiction takes hold, it's definitely a brain, brain issue.
Yeah. Right. Okay. All right. So, is our system failing these people? I think we kind of covered that, but I feel like it's failing it miserably. Like,
absolutely.
Like I don't know why in a lot of you talked a little about the political tribalism. And I don't belong to one or the other. I look at things and I go, listen, if you got the solution, I'll go that route. I would say I probably I'm definitely socially very liberal. Like if you're homosexual and you want to get married, by all means get married. For I got no business telling you what you should do in that situation. Right. But when it comes to like the Second Amendment, I got guns and stuff like that, so I'm not, but I probably find myself, because of the social issues, voting more to the liberal side than I would to the conservative side. But I still, if there was a conservative candidate for president, a candidate for Senate that said my main goal was I'm going to get this legal bribery system out of politics, I'm going to take all dark money out of it, I'm voting for him.
The lobbying.
I think that is a solution to a problem, and I don't care what party you're with, I'm voting for you. Because if that's your main goal, then I'm down with that, because I think that goal solves all kinds of other problems.
Yeah.
So, but we get the one political party in the country, and I don't want to name it because people get mad. They get mad anytime another country comes up with a better solution for something. We can't look at it because that's Denmark or that's something. Listen, if it's working, for God's sakes, do that. And I know that there's some European countries that have had some real novel ideas on addiction, and they're having great results as far as that goes. And we need to decriminalize some of this stuff because it's not helping the situation. First, you're putting addicts in with other addicts, not a good idea.
Like 7 out of 10 people in prison are nonviolent drug offenses.
Right, and then look at the homeless situation. The massive majority of those people are on drugs on the street like that. So that's a huge problem that's going on there. But every time we put all these people together, just find new interesting ways to get drugs and abuse drugs. And then when you criminalize it, all you're doing is further depressing this person into this situation. You're not pulling them out of it. You're pushing them down back into it. So we've got it jacked up for sure. I mean, our system drives me nuts. And then you could go into mental health in our system, and that's a whole nother basket of worms. That's a mess.
The system is definitely failing because the stigma that surrounds. We look at somebody gets treatment and they relapse. If you talk to a nurse that works in the ER, you say, "I've seen this guy 5 times in the last 3 months."
Well, that's what Stacy is. She is a nurse. The next question is right there. She's saying, as a provider, what can we do as providers to help more? What could that nurse do?
I would say be more compassionate.
Yeah,
to the person. They're struggling. You talk to any addict, and they're going to tell you that they don't like what they are.
Yeah, right.
They don't want to be there. They don't have any other coping skills. That's their only coping skills.
If you're a nurse pulling a 10-hour shift, and at the 9th hour,
it's difficult for
this
them.
bugger comes in, he's all dirty, he's thrown up all over himself, he's OD,
yelling at you, screaming at you.
Right.
It's a difficult job for sure.
I'm sure it's tough, but you gotta toughen up, Buttercup, and help that guy out.
But that's not her failing the person. It's the insurance and the medical field failing the person because that person needs help.
Yeah, right.
he doesn't need to be coming to the ER, 3 times a month.
No, that's
He
ludicrously
needs,
expensive.
He needs
to
treatment
do.
that's available for him.
Right.
During that moment where he may be open to it. Because that's another thing.
Don't get me started on the whole medical for-profit industry that we have going on, because that's a whole mess too. But okay, so providers are there enough treatment centers / options / care available for these people?
No.
And
there's a lot of private places, and here the treatment industry right now is like the Wild West. There are good places out there, and there are some really shady places. Make sure you vet, make sure you talk, make sure you visit if you can. Talk to somebody who can recommend. Talk to many people who can recommend. There's some shady treatment centers, but there's some really good ones out there too.
Now, what about
But the biggest issue is the people who don't have insurance, the people who are on Medicaid. There are definitely not enough beds for a Medicaid. By the time someone's 35 years old and they've been shooting heroin or smoking meth or doing coke and they lost their job 5 years, the last thing on their mind is having insurance. You'll be lucky if they have state Medicaid.
Sure.
That's a hassle for them.
Right, because they got to keep filing for that and everything else. And do
That's the last thing on their mind.
Right.
So for those people, those indigent people, their options are very slim, and it's usually a long waiting list.
Right.
You got good insurance, you can find treatment right away.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. And then she goes on to extrapolate on that to so that's the patient. What about support? Are there things out there? I know you have a support group, but are there facilities for the family of these? Any care or support offered for the family of these patients? How do you I want to get into during the podcast, I'll make sure that I put a link in for the or something they can find that group that you do. Yep. But how is that funded?
It's not.
Everyone that's involved is just volunteering.
Yeah, I show up every Tuesday.
Yep. Right,
Been doing it for the last 3.5 years.
Good.
It's my home church. Pastor was kind enough to give me a classroom every Tuesday night, and but there are here when I started on this journey after my son passed away, I needed support. I needed to find a support group, and I never really went the traditional 12-step way like Al-Anon or Alateen, for the non-user. There are 12-step meetings for non-users, Families Anonymous, stuff like that. I went to a meeting that was up in Naperville, and I drove from New Lenox to Naperville every Thursday night for about an hour and a half, or for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
It took me 45 minutes to get, 45 minutes there, 45 minutes home. And, when I first started doing it, I found that meeting was one of the few meetings around. It was on Thursday night. It was my night off from work. And, the first couple times I went up there, I was like, this is crazy. I'm driving all the way to Naperville and this, but I'd come out of those meetings like you talked about, coming out of your, I came out of those meetings learning so much and so supported by other people on the same road. There's huge power in a support group of your peers. No matter what it is you're struggling with, you find a support group. So, now I tell people that come to my meeting, hey, if you don't like my meeting, or if Tuesday nights don't work for you, let me know. I'll find you another meeting. Within 20 miles, I'll find you a meeting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday.
Sure.
Monday night in Frankfort. Tuesday night, there's 2 in New Lenox. Wednesday night, there's one in Plainfield and one in Naperville. Thursday night, there's one in Naperville. Friday night, I can't think off the top of my head, but there's a lot more meetings to choose from. Get yourself to the biggest thing about my support group meeting is open to everybody. We're an open meeting. We support all roads to recovery. We want people who are not only have a loved one who's struggling. I typically have people who are in recovery there too, and we can learn so much from each other.
Right.
The addict can talk about what was on their mind, what they were thinking. They can learn from the parent who was pulling their hair out, trying to figure out how to fix their
Sure.
kid or their spouse. But I also invite people who are just, curious, who want to get ahead of that curve, who want to get educated and see what should I do, what shouldn't I do, stuff like that.
One of my favorite sayings that I've told to my sons is, listen, A smart man will learn from his mistakes. A wise man will learn from someone else's mistakes. So you can hear these other stories and be like, all right, all I got to do is put myself in this situation, and then I learn from that mistake that I didn't have to make.
Right.
You know, I mean, I don't need to fall in that hole till no one knows the hole's there.
Yeah, it's like the best, the best offense is a good defense.
Sure.
Be on the defensive when you're, when you're dealing with substance abuse.
Right. All right. Let's see. I think it is important to point out you cannot force an addict to seek help. You cannot force them to admit to get clean, sober. It is to be their choice. So we talked about this kind of stuff. Okay, and the question is, how do we do this? How do you get them, the Inception thing? How do you get them to take it on themselves?
Well, I think it's it has to be their choice. And so many stories and families that I've dealt with, myself included, you send your kid to treatment and you think they're going to be fixed. Well, they didn't want to go to treatment. They just went to treatment to get you off their back, So they have to want it. And anybody will tell you that they have to want it. But what we can do is we can be loving and compassionate so that when they're ready to make a change, when that window of opportunity opens up, they know that you're going to be there for them. Let them know that that you're trying to understand, and of course with your firm boundaries in place. You're not going to let them walk all over you, but you're going to let them know, hey, I know you're struggling. I know it sucks. I know it's going to be wintertime and you're living out on the streets. You're couch surfing in your car broke. Whatever. I know your life is miserable. But when you're ready for help, I'll be there. I'll support the positive things you do to try to make yourself better. Yeah. I'm not going to support and give you gas money to,
No, right. You got to take, it seems to me that you got to take evasive action as far as, like you said, locking your medicine cabinet up. There's things that you're going to have to do because this person's going to lie to get the things. You don't leave money laying around and stuff like that because they're going to take that money. But if it was my situation, I mean, from what I read and everything else, I would have to be insanely supportive, but also making sure that everything is padded so that I can't have a situation where I'm enabling you to do something.
Try to stay a step ahead of it.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about what you got here. The Narcan. What would someone do, and how does someone acquire
Narcan? This is available at almost every pharmacy. You don't need a prescription for it. They have a prescription. They have a prescription on file. You can go in if you have insurance. It'll probably cost you, 10 or 15 or $20 or something copay. But this is Narcan. This is a brand name, Narcan. It's the most common, like Kleenex, Narcan. The real name is naloxone. Naloxone is the name of the drug. Naloxone has been around since 1961. It wasn't FDA approved until 1971, but it's been used. Anybody who works in the ER, they've been using this stuff for years and years and years. But
is that what the shirt is?
That's what the shirt is, yep.
Okay.
Yep, saving lives since 1971.
Got it.
But if you suspect an opioid overdose, and let me say, everybody should have this stuff. If anybody in your home is prescribed opioids, if your parents, if your grandparents have opioids for pain in their home, you should have this available. This will save lives. This has saved, one of the main reasons why the overdose rates haven't skyrocketed the last couple of weeks is because of the availability of this drug right here.
Right.
This will reverse an opioid overdose. It will not reverse an overdose of methamphetamine or cocaine or alcohol or anything like that. It works only on opioids.
Yeah. Now, I've read it just blocks the opioid.
It blocks the opioids. Your brain has what they call opioid receptors. And the heroin actually attaches to the opioid receptor, and that's what gets you your high. When you take the Narcan will actually kick off the heroin or the opiate, and it'll block that receptor right there, so that heroin can't get back on. This will wear off 30 to 90 minutes. So it is always recommended if you come across somebody who you believe is in an overdose, call 911 because for a couple of reasons. Because after they come to, hopefully they do come to, they're going to be angry because you just took away their high. They're going to go into instant withdrawal, And the fact that this will wear off over time, they may overdose again.
Right.
Depending on how much.
Now,
depending on how much they have.
Does that
in
have
their
the same
system.
effect on the synthetic, the fentanyl?
On fentanyl, you may need multiple doses of this. Another reason why to call 911. This box here has 2 doses in there. And this is what the dose looks like. Okay, it's just like a nose spray, like an Afrin. It's got a little plunger right there. And you just stick it up in the nostril and plunge it up there. Now, what you should do first off, and you can just like anything else, you can YouTube Narcan, and they'll walk you through the steps to how to do it. But you come across somebody who's unconscious, their lips are blue, skin is kind of clammy. You do either a rub across the top of their lip right there, or what they call a sternum rub, because it's really painful. And you're trying to wake them up, you can't wake up. You look, you see that they're not breathing. Go ahead and administer this. This will not harm you. I can do this right now, and it would not harm you anymore. Sure. You will not get Good Samaritan law. You will not, if the person doesn't come to, person dies, whatever happens, you will not be held liable for administering Narcan.
I mean, if you're just straight up ever, like in your life, wanted to save a life, get some of this and have it on you.
Absolutely.
It could happen.
I carry it all the time. You want to keep this at basically room temperature. You don't want to leave it in your car so it freezes or gets up to 100 degrees. They say between 59 and 77 degrees. I'm sure there's a little variance right there. We were talking earlier about expiration dates. This has an expiration date of 2021. This stuff is probably a little bit older, but this is August of 2019. Studies have shown, every medication has an expiration date, but studies have shown this stuff, kept at that room temperature is probably good for 7 or 8 years, at least after the expiration date. So Don't throw it away. It's still probably good. So very easy to administer. It's just that little plunger right there. You don't want to test it, up in the air to make sure it's coming out. Just put it right in the nostril and just plunge it right there.
Yeah.
30, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, you should see some response. If you don't, go ahead and administer the second one. Again, by this time, hopefully the EMS is on its way, and you're going to want them there because they are going to need to go to the hospital.
I did check out a YouTube video, and the way that they described it, I think it was reenacted, but it was immediate that this person came out of that situation.
Depending on what the like the fentanyl, I've heard people saying 3 or 4 or 5 doses.
Wow.
And
you
again,
can't OD on that.
No, the EMS, they will have, and actually, like when you get in the hospital, if someone comes into the emergency room, they do an IV. It gets into the system.
In it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Gets into the system. This stuff has been around for a long time, but it's only become mainstream, or packaged like this, I think, within the last 5, 6, 7 years. So this stuff has saved countless lives, and there's no recovery unless the person's alive. So people talk about this just prolongs somebody's drug use. No, it prolongs the idea that maybe they can get help at some future time.
Right, give them another chance.
Give them another chance.
So that was another one that I saw that really struck me as interesting, is people view relapse as failure, and they shouldn't. They should view relapse as, okay, man, we were just building a house of blocks, the blocks fell down, we just got to start over again.
We still have a foundation.
Yeah, we got to start over again and just start building again, because, you're still alive.
And that's part of the stigma too, is somebody, a diabetic, goes into insulin shock because they had pancakes for breakfast, or they went to Dunkin' Donuts or something, or you've got somebody who had bypass surgery 2 years ago, and they're out eating a steak dinner or something, and it's a disease. It can be treated. If it's not treated, it'll be deadly. In a short time or a long time, but it will eventually be deadly. Relapse. There's a couple different kinds of relapses. I think there's somebody who's got maybe some substance-free time under their belts, and then they have a moment of weakness, and they go out and use, and the next morning they feel terrible, or Monday morning they feel terrible, and they get right back on the bandwagon and call their sponsor or whatever program that they're working, and get right back on it. I look at that as a slip. Some hardcore people who are in 12-step, will tell you, no, you start all over day one again. That's great too. Whatever program you work to make yourself get better. But a relapse to me is a continued use, for an extended period amount of time.
Right now, okay. So I wanted to ask you about this because I saw it's supposed to be not legal in the States, but there's supposed to be some drug that it's a root or something like that they're doing in Mexico.
Ibogaine.
Yeah, right. Okay, I pulled it up on my phone. That's what I was messing around there with, and they're saying that they have like. I don't know how it works, but incredible result. And I don't know I didn't read into it enough, but the stuff I read was saying that you could take a straight up heroin addict, a guy that's like that, and a lot of these people are going out and binging on heroin for a week because they know they're going to Mexico to get this treatment, and they've come home clean.
Yeah. It's I've read some articles. I'm not 100%. Or not an expert on that either, but it's the best of my knowledge, it's like a hallucinogenic trip.
Yes, right.
That it kind of resets the way your brain, your synapses, the way everything fires in your brain.
Yeah.
It's something that needs to be studied. Now, will the American Medical Society, will there be funding to study something like that?
Right, that's my problem.
Because
they're saying that's now that
look at all the Western medicine or whatever, that has been working for opium. They've been using it as a medicine for years and years and years for thousands of years.
Right.
But there's acupuncture, stuff like that. That other countries use and have used for thousands of years, that we're like, oh no, take a pill instead.
Well, they're starting to use mushrooms for PTSD and ketamine. It was the other one that I saw, which I thought that was another abusive drug where people were abusing ketamine at one time, wasn't that?
Yeah, there's
Special K or something like that.
Ketamine and kratom are two different.
Okay, but they're supposed to be having results. I mean, I would be.
It's stuff that needs to be studied.
Studied for sure. Right.
And here's the thing: is our society and our lobbyists in Washington don't see the way to make a lot of money on natural cures.
Yeah, no, okay. And so when we say lobbyists, like I actually was a lobbyist for
drug manufacturers are the largest lobbyists in Washington.
Right. Now, I was a lobbyist for a consumer advocacy group, and the act of lobbying is actually essential to our form of government, because every time I went in for a meeting with a senator or a representative, they know jack squat about anything. Yeah. Like, you go in there and you explain things to them, and they're like wide-eyed, what? I can't believe it takes you 6 months to get a wheelchair? You're kidding me. They send you home in a 150-pound wheelchair, and you're a quadriplegic. I'm like, yeah, that's how this works, because the insurance is all jacked up, and this law's got to get passed. Now, I didn't offer them any money. I don't fly them to a golf course, nothing like that. Right. But we go there and we inform them. So the act of lobbying is essential, but the act of, we'll also then, donate $100,000 to your super PAC, that's a problem.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
The drug companies, like you're saying, right, if you can give this guy a couple magic mushrooms and his PTSD is going to be gone, there's millions of dollars worth of treatment he's not going to need now, and that's not going to work out for these drug companies.
Yeah.
And then this ibogaine, do you know anything about it? Is it a natural? Like, I thought it was a root or something.
Yeah, it's a root of a tree or a plant.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And I mean, I saw a documentary on that, and they took this dude, and he was definitely a mess, and he was going to get high on heroin because he was going to say goodbye to heroin, because he had saved up to do this thing, and he went and got high on heroin, and then he went to Mexico, and when he came back, I guess they checked back with him like a year later, never did heroin again. And I'm like, and I'm all for studying, but if we're losing 70,000 people a year,
right,
somebody better get studying on this shit, because there needs to be that's the magic pill that you were looking for as a parent, right? There needs to be some
funding to look into stuff like this.
I mean, but if you could do that, you would have done that in a heartbeat. I could just wipe this out and have my son, squared away as far as
reset his brain.
Right, because that's the one I always hear from people, is that it seemed like this wasn't my son anymore. This became a different person.
Totally two different people.
Right. If I could just get that other guy back, we could get this show on the road. So, well, Is there anything else, man? I mean, you've got your wealth of information, and by all means, Tom, I think this went, terrific as far as information goes. We're an hour and 54 minutes into it. Did end up going almost 2 hours. Is there anything else that you think you can get across besides? Give me some times and dates. What and the location? Where's
get
the
yourself if you love somebody who's struggling, whether it's a family member or spouse or a grandson or whatever, get yourself to a support group meeting. I'm not a professional, I'm not a psychologist. Get yourself some psychiatric counseling. Counseling is great, but it's also very powerful to get into a support group of people of your peers, people who are on the same road as you, and know that you're not alone. That's the biggest thing. My group meets at Peace Lutheran Church. We're on Route 30 in New Lenox, right across from Lincoln Way Central. I believe it's 1900 East Lincoln Highway. Tuesday nights we meet from 7 to 8:30. Like this podcast, we usually go a little bit over. Sometimes we're there till 9 o'clock. But if you got to come late, you got to leave early, whatever. That's fine. Just come and get whatever you can out of it. Anybody who wants to reach out to me, I'll talk to people one-on-one. I'll meet you for coffee. Phone number 815-354-3195. Contact me if you want to know more about my meeting or if you want to know about other meetings that might be in your area. I'll do my best to find you one.
Yeah, and I mean, embarrassment kills. So Tom's put on, there's no stigma. If you think you're in this situation, come talk to Tom.
Yeah.
Because people die of embarrassment on all kinds of levels. People get stranded and die of embarrassment because they don't want to go out and get embarrassed that they got stranded.
Right.
People get conned out of hundreds of thousands of dollars and they don't go to the police because they're embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed. Show up at the meeting. Save a life.
Yeah. Oh, I will add one other thing. The main message that I like to share, and we didn't talk about it too much tonight, but is the message of hope. People can and do recover. You don't hear about that on the 10 o'clock news. You'll hear about the drug bust. You'll hear about the people overdosing. People can and do recover. There's over 23 million Americans that are in recovery right now. My daughter is one of them. She's a success story. Is it one day at a time? Yeah. But it can be done, and that's the message people need to hear, is that people can and do recover, and especially for the person who's struggling, they need to hear that message. They need to know that somebody loves them, that there is somebody who's going to understand them, and that they can get help if and when they want it.
Good, great. I mean, that's the reason this podcast, I sought you out just because hope, and I hope that somebody can get help somehow, in some way, and making more connections to that help would be good. Every podcast I do, I ask you, if you like what we're doing, please go to the website or go to YouTube, subscribe to my channel, like the video. We're on iTunes, we're on Google Play. Anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find my podcast. And, drop me a line. I connected with you on Facebook. If you can find me on social media, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Connect with me. If you know someone that knows something, that's an interesting topic for a conversation, let me know. We'll talk about it. Thanks. I appreciate it, man. I really do.
Yep.
Thanks a lot. I mean, it's a big topic. Cool.
Good stuff.
It was good. Like I said, you got a wealth of information, man.